Hello, my name is Mike Davis-Marks and I'm the Managing Editor of theveteran.uk and also a Director of Veteran Force Resilience Kick. Welcome to The Veteran Voice, which as it suggests is talking to veterans about their experiences not just in the service, but how they transitioned out into Civvy Street and how they use their transferable skills to great effect, either in employment or helping rebuild communities. It promises to be a fantastic and fascinating listen. So let's roll on. Welcome to another edition of The Veteran Voice. And today we're delighted to be joined by Sean Foley, who had a distinguished 8-year career in the Royal Marines, has done many, many interesting things since. And we're going to learn quite a lot about what they were during this next episode. So, Sean, welcome.
Well, thank you for having me.
Okay, so let's wind the clock back to probably teenage years, maybe early 20s. What made you decide to join the Royal Marines?
Yes, I was lucky enough to be the son of an RAF officer at the time, and we were out in Cyprus in Akrotiri.
Wow.
And we were there between 82 and about 85. And HMS Fearless came to do her rounds of the world after the Falklands.
Post-Falklands.
Yeah, and lucky enough, the kids and the wives, partners of the RAF officers were invited out onto Fearless and into the wardroom for a cocktail party and, pressing the flesh and saying hi and all that sort of thing, flying the flag. And we all went out on LCUs, I think, the landing craft utilities, which was interesting for everybody, including myself as a 14, 15-year-old boy at the time. And subsequently in the wardroom, I met two very striking individuals who seemed to be having more fun than most. And they were in they looked to me like they were in the 6'2" brigade. They were big strapping lads, and one of them was in green and one of them was in navy. And I subsequently found out that the navy was a chief petty officer there, and the marine was in green, and he was wearing a hairy shirt, and he just looked that sort of big and impressive, to have everything together kind of guy. I think he was a major. And it was in that moment I made the decision whether or not I'd join the Navy or the Marines. And I went, I'll have the Marines.
In the wardroom of HMS Fearless, in the RAF Akrotiri,
yeah,
in 1982.
In 1983, actually, yeah. It was fantastic. It was a very enjoyable evening, but I came away going, yeah, I can do that. That's what I'll go.
And that feeling obviously never left you because you ended up joining the Royal Marines. Tell us about that short journey.
So I did the thing that I think a lot of guys may have done is I'd had a boarding school education. I'd had a very good upbringing. I lived in a bubble, really, that I only recently really realised that was a fabulous way to be brought up. But I really wanted to do something that was above and beyond, and I didn't want to tell my parents. I just wanted to do it for me. Obviously, the memory of meeting the Marine on Fearless was very powerful. So I trained, I worked, I came back to the UK from Cyprus. I could have stayed, and I decided that whilst working in London, I was going to apply before my parents came back from Cyprus, and they were coming back about 6 months later. And so I did it, and when they arrived back in the UK, I presented to them that I'd decided and I had been accepted.
How did they react to that? How did your RAF dad react to that?
Well, I would add in, how did my Irish RAF dad react to that? Because the history, of course, my grandfather was part of the old IRA fighting against the Black and Tans many years before. So completely the opposite side of the aisle, if you like. And I said to Dad, and I could see his face go through the whirl of, oh God, that's really hard. You'll never get in. why did you do that? We sent you to boarding school in Ireland so you wouldn't do this. And then he went, well, I did it, so, And then I realized I didn't need their input to validate my choice to go to the Marines. It was a very, very internal thing. And so that's what I did. They reacted.
They end up pleased.
Yeah, they went through the gamut, but ultimately went, well, okay, if that's what you want to do, you've got to go do it. And you've done it anyway, so...
So 8 years in the Royal Marines,
Yep.
any op tours during that time? What were the highlights?
So a quick whistle stop tour. I got very lucky and what I might say unlucky at the same time. Did Northern Ireland, did Norway, did Belize, and they were enjoyable for very, very different reasons. Ended up going out on a thing op driver out to Kuwait. I think I've got that right. A saber rattling tour, I called it. But nothing. I didn't really get into the dirty end of the Marines and the actual, the coalface. Sadly, because I'd been trying to at every turn, when anything ever happened, I would be trying to get out to be there. But the universe said no.
Well, you joined in 88, yes?
I joined in 88.
And in 96. So
Yeah.
that was what's, that was
Relatively quiet.
swords into plowshares was the mantra in the early 90s.
Yeah.
I remember it were options for change.
Options for change, exactly right. And I was very keen, like I guess so many of the guys would have been, to go and to do what you were trained to do.
Yeah.
Sadly, most of it was on exercise or on lower, more minor operations, apart from obviously Northern Ireland at the time.
Wasn't a good time to be a submariner either. I just add this in because they're half the number of submarines during that defence review, and we've never really recovered properly since. But
That's right. And I think at the time, I have a personal connection to the Vice Chief of Defence Staff, Sir John Willis, at the time, who was heading up the options for change process. He was actually the commanding officer at Akrotiri.
So are you taking blame for this then?
In some way. I'll do that.
So what made you decide to leave the Marines after 8 years?
Okay, so there's a phrase we use. I was going up so fast I was getting nosebleeds, which is the comedy of you're not getting promoted. I was a yo-yo lance corporal, so up and down, up and down.
Was that through bad behaviour or just the way that it worked?
I'd like to say it was a free spirit. Others might term it bad behaviour.
We'll go with free spirit for the time being.
I think what it was, more than anything, I promised myself that I would be joining the Royal Marines to have fun. That was the deal with myself. As long as it was fun, I'd stay. And as soon as it stopped being fun, which it did, weirdly, out in Kuwait, but not because there was the potential for real conflict at the time. It was much more about my observation of senior leadership at the time, which I disagreed with as a lance corporal.
As a free-spirited yo-yo lance corporal.
Yeah.
So what did you decide to do then?
So I decided to put in a lot of thought and planning and just leave. The transition at the time, there appeared to be not a great deal of things available at the time. I chose to, endeavouring to look to the future at what I might go into and be good at, which was a burgeoning market, and it was computers. Okay. So I built my first computer on a resettlement course, and came away with this computer thinking, yeah, great, now I don't have to buy a computer for the business I want to run. And I had decided that on leaving, I would never put a rucksack on my back again. I would never climb hills and mountains again. The foolishness of youth.
Have you kept those promises?
Well, within about 4 weeks, I was across on the east coast of Scotland, And we were living on the east coast of Scotland, not far from Arbroath at the time, Montrose. And I headed across to the other side and joined an outdoor centre. And within 24 hours of being there, I was taking a rucksack and people up the hills.
Once the Royal Marine, always the Royal Marine.
It's like, okay, I can't get away from it. So I did that for a little bit and decided then to set up my own business doing team building, training and development. So that was
this is the bit that interests me, I think, a lot, because we learn an awful lot in our time during the services, and you were obviously well equipped for that. When did that team building become the EQ Commando?
So for about 12 years, I ran a very successful business in Scotland. It was called Activate Scotland, and each of the letters meant something. Activate was attitude, courage, trust, vision, initiative, that sort of thing. And the 2008 financial crisis put paid to that very quickly. Within 3 months, we went from black to red to dead. And so I needed to do something else. And this was way before the EQ Commando was thought of. I ended up doing a number of different roles and areas of work in various countries, one of which was working with Tony Robbins, or Anthony Robbins, a life guru. Many people know of him. I worked with him in Scotland, in St Andrews, and completely changed my outlook on the world and life. I became a raw food person, gave up alcohol, just changed my life completely.
Sorry, okay.
As part of a process.
Right.
But what then happened was, after the financial crisis hit, then it was trying to find work. Having lost the business, I had a great idea to go to Cyprus on a whim, but with the backing of a friend who had a global business in health and fitness. And so for me, I had met him on the Anthony Robbins courses that I was working on. And for me, he seemed like a great option for me to go and learn that business with him and then open up an area of the Middle East, basing myself in Cyprus, which was a genius move in 2010, 11, when the financial crisis continued on into Greece and therefore hit Cyprus at the same time.
Yeah.
So I ended up back here on the shores of the UK with a wife, with 3 children, with 12 boxes, mostly of books and kids' toys, and pretty much nothing else.
It must have been a bit of a low point for you.
It was incredibly difficult. But at no point, and this is a reference, I think, back to the training and resilience that you're taught within commando training, at no point did I think or believe that I could not win again.
That's very much a Royal Marine trait.
Yes, and I think it's a double-edged sword, if I'm honest, because one of the things I realized I had done mostly incorrectly was try to do it all myself. That I was the crack-on guy, the check flashes, and just keep going. And actually, it nearly broke me. And so I would always balance that out with, okay, yes, you can be resilient, but if you just keep going and keep going, you'll break.
So that low point, that nadir,
Yeah.
what happened next? What got you back up?
So arriving back on the shores with absolutely nothing was very much a low point. However, having left the Corps and almost turned my back on it and decided I was going to go out into the world and make my own way, I found that I had to reach out to the guys I knew, guys I'd used and worked with when I had run my business. I'd used a lot of Marines in the business world then. And I realized I had to call on them again. So I set up a LinkedIn page and then asked a dozen of my friends from the Corps, would they be willing to give me a testimonial based on nothing other than they knew me, my history. And that worked really rather well. One of the guys I connected with was the compliance manager for a maritime security company. His name escapes me right at the moment. But he got in touch and he said, Axel, which was my nickname from the call, he said, Axel, I can get you out working in 12 days. What you have to do, though, is get this list of certificates by then. And so with a mobile phone and a credit card, I went and got all the certificates bar one, which I then got when I went to the company and did their training. And within 12 days, I was on my way out into the Indian Ocean to be a hired gun at about 45, to be a hired gun on the bridge wings of commercial shipping.
In the early 10s, decade of the 10s, that was a big thing because piracy around the Horn of Africa.
That's right, yeah.
And there were lots of companies setting up to provide physical security.
Absolutely.
You were part of that.
And I decided to join that throng, as it were. And frankly, it was a lifesaver to head out, to have money coming in, good money at the time. It was somewhere around the 400 quid a day from the day you left home. It obviously subsequently changed dramatically after that. But it allowed me to do some work, get my self-respect back. It allowed me to do the exercise I needed to continue doing. And it kept me busy and engaged. And for that, I really loved it. What I hated was, at 45, having to pick up a gun again and be doing what I'd been doing.
All those promises that you said you wouldn't do, again.
All those things, yeah.
Okay, so let's move on from that, because I really want to get into EQ Commando and that piece of work. And also some other strands that you and I have in common, directed Bootneck's business. Tell us about how did EQ Commando come about?
So
what is it?
Okay, so I decided to set myself up as the EQ Commando. One part of it is incredibly obvious. A commando is as part of my background. And EQ is the emotional quotient or emotional intelligence score, if you like. Emotional intelligence and commandos are usually two phrases you may not see in the same positive sentence. However, I believe from what we were taught during training was emotional intelligence and emotional resilience. It's just back then it hadn't been invented in the late 80s. And not Marshall Rosenberg, there was a white paper written in 1995 identifying emotional intelligence as one of the critical factors in leadership. And I had reflected on that when I came back from Cyprus, when I went out to the maritime security world. I worked with some fantastic leaders there, as I had done in the Corps, and I also worked with those who perhaps were less brilliant and professional as they could have been. And that had me thinking. So when the maritime security world sort of wrapped up for me, I decided I was ready to go back to either consultancy or running my own business. So I went, what have I got in my skill set? What do I understand? And sometimes, what do I need to learn more of? And emotional intelligence was a thing that really came up. I had background as a commando, I had background in resilience. I'd had a bit of a roller coaster ride at life. And I thought, well, okay, I am wanting to share my experience of both good leadership and poor leadership with the world. And having identified that emotional intelligence was incredibly important, I vectored in on that and said, okay, I'm going to become the EQ Commando. So I set up a small consultancy to start working with leaders, C-suite leaders in business, managers who are wanting to step up, and those who are then also wanting to step up into managerial roles. And so the EQ Commando was born, and leadership training and development came back into my life yet again.
you won't get me disagreeing about the importance of emotional intelligence and leadership development, particularly self-awareness and the role of, and the fact that the lead there is the supportive team, servant leadership, we call it.
Absolutely.
So therefore, the empathy that you need to have for your people. You use a system which you told me about before, called an Enneagram.
Enneagram, yeah.
Explain to our listeners what that's all about.
Okay. So over the last 30 or so years, I've been involved on and off with personality and behavioral profiling systems. Everything from Belbin's team role theory to Gallup strength finders, across the whole gamut. And I had been varying degrees of impressed and not impressed, because I found that through the practice of personality and behavioral profiling, people would use it as a shield to hide behind, or a shield for the reason they were acting the way they were, or they would use it as a box to put people in. And I didn't think either of those things were very useful in a team building or a leadership environment. And then I came across a thing called the Enneagram. And Ennea meaning number 9 in Greek, and gramma meaning map or graph. And when I took the questionnaire, the profile that came back was as if somebody had been watching me for my whole life and had
got it right.
And it just absolutely nailed it.
Yeah.
More so than any of the others I'd ever been involved with, shared, taught, or taken. And from there I went, well, this is something new, not new, but this is something very different. It's not new. It goes back 4,000 years. It can be traced back 4,000 years.
It's Greek at least.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, all good things. And so it has its roots in Sufism and Christianity, but it's not a religious piece. And what I found about it once I dove in a little deeper was that it was a far superior way of identifying our deeper drivers, the reasons why we do things, understanding ourselves more. And one of the things that the EQ Commando is very gets really behind is the sort of Stoic philosophies of know thyself first. Yeah. And the Enneagram gives us a very, very clear what we call ego structure rather than a personality or behavioral profile. It's a journey and a path that you can choose to walk.
And you're an Enneagram coach.
Coach, that's correct, yeah. So I use it as, I use the Enneagram and the profile as a guideline to both keep myself and my clients honest, because we refer back to it regularly and it helps to keep us on the straight and narrow.
Towards the end of this session, I shall ask you to tell people how people find out more about this. Okay. But there's a couple of other questions I want to ask before we wrap up. One is Bootnext into Business.
Yes.
A Royal Marines, not exclusively Royal Marines, business networking organisation, which seems to be making waves in terms of doing the right thing for people leaving the service, not just the Royal Marines, but
Absolutely.
Mostly Royal Marines. Tell us a bit about that and the power of networking.
So first off, I'm an absolute advocate for networking. It's a must. If you are leaving service, you need to be networking as soon as you've decided, that you're leaving. If you do that, you will get to speak to people who have walked the path that you are endeavoring to walk on. Bootnext into Business was set up about 7 years ago, and the very simple aim and intention is exactly what it says on the tin. Helping veteran bootnecks and or serving bootnecks, I call them leavers and lefters, helping them into work, or if they wish to set up their own business, to have conversations with former bootnecks who have done that. And so we're bootnecks helping bootnecks help bootnecks. And we meet every quarter. There are about 80 or 90 of us regularly. And it's a different version of networking that most people might be used to, because there's a sequence that we go through of a hollow square where everybody gets their 20-second or so pitch. And it's a very, very simple, easy, and effective way for those in the room who want to speak to certain particular other individuals. They can pin their ears back during that process and then target those individuals straight away after.
And it really works, doesn't it?
It very much works. We have, I personally have benefited, which has been fantastic, from direct work, and many others have been placed. For instance, I think the early part of last year and the latter part of the year before, we were having 100% hit rate of those people who are being invited to interview to secure a role.
Someone told me, and I don't know if this is 100% correct, that actually Royal Marines are more likely to start their own business than any other branch of the UK services. And I can see that because I think Royal Marines are remarkably resourceful people, but among the most resourceful people on this planet as a group of people.
Yes, I would concur with that. I don't know what the stats are, but what I would say is the energy and attitude that is instilled into you during Royal Marines training, more so I think than many of the other services. There's a depth and a drive that is instilled early. The one thing I will say is bootnecks can be, when they leave service, very individual, that they have to do it themselves. And I know I definitely fell into that trap myself, that I had left service and everything that was good and great about it is now behind me. And I will crack on and just do it as best I can. But actually what we would benefit from, and I think that's one of the driving forces of bootnecks into business, is to know that there are bootnecks out there willing and to continue being your brother from another mother to help you get ahead, whether you choose your own path or you want to join a larger organisation.
I mean, the whole point of the veteran.uk is to shout from the rooftops what transferable skills people who have military service have got that they can use in Civvy Street, but either in employment or in veteran-led organisations, volunteer organisations that can help rebuild societal resilience and things like that. So last question. What military skills did you think you acquired during your 8 years that you are still putting into practice now?
Well, one of the first things I think is part of the Commando ethos and spirit is cheerfulness in the face of adversity. It is a trope. It is, trotted out regularly, and I still think it's incredibly important. No matter how dark it's getting, no matter how difficult it's getting, if you have somebody with that similar background who just gets it and knows that we're going to have a little laugh here, even though it might seem
a guiding light.
It really makes all the difference. I think it's the central hub that allows all the other ones to really shine.
Okay. Great one. Okay, so when we publish this, we'll put all the links that the listeners, viewers can see where to go to find out more about Enneagrams, EQ Commandos, bootnecks in the business, etc. But for the time being, Sean, eight years of Royal Marine, a businessman of many, many means and
still
opportunities,
going, yes.
and resilient and resourceful to the T. Thank you very much.
It's absolutely my pleasure. Thank you.